It's a big setback for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The BJP suffered a huge blow in Bihar as the Mahagathbandhan, led by Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, staged a spectacular comeback, winning over 170 seats. In fact, it's a hat-trick for Nitish Kumar, who fought the elections jointly with Lalu Prasad Yadav's RJD and the Congress in a seesaw of sorts. Early trends indicated a grand win for the BJP, but the picture changed dramatically as the counting progressed. For Modi, who put all at stake in the Bihar elections, it's a double whammy. He'll have to solely take the blame for the defeat. Not just that, his hopes of mustering the Rajya Sabha numbers through a big win in Bihar has now come to a knot.
That is indeed right. The Congress, of course, is the big beneficiary as well, with its tally going up to 24 seats from the 4 it got in last assembly elections. Lalu Prasad Yadav has also something to cheer big about, with his RJD emerging as the single largest party in Bihar. The election results will have a big implication both for the country's politics, the reform movement and economy as well. First, it could be a precursor to a third front at the national level, while at the same time, the development agenda could perhaps suffer a setback, at least for the near term. The big Bihar victory and its implications on the country's political landscape is our top story right here on this big picture. Swaminathan Aiyar, Meghnad, Desai, Rajiv Kumar, Mohandas, Gurcharan, Narayan, and of course Nalin Kohli, who has a lot of tough talk and tough questions to answer as far as the BJP is concerned. So let's begin the discussion with you, Swami. The question really is this a referendum on the Modi government?
I always said that, they're likely to lose. They're the underdog. They got 38.5% of the vote in the general election. In every state election after that, they've got less than they got in the general election. And on this time, they only got 35.5%. So if you only get 35.5%, obviously you're going to be defeated. So instead of, viewing Modi as this great rampaging champion, if you just looked at his vote share in the general election, you realize how vulnerable he was the moment the opponents got together. Over and above that, I think I would like to add that while people are saying that this is just a defeat for Modi, this is in a sense a defeat for the Modi-Amit Shah axis, and I would say it's more of a defeat for Amit Shah. I mean, the way Arun Shourie put it was, this government is UPA upscaled plus a cow. I would say Modi equals UPA upscaled and Amit Shah equals cow. That is what really lost.
We'll get to the cow politics in just a bit, but Nalin Kohli, I want to throw this to you. Swami says in many ways it's a loss for Modi and for Amit Shah, more so for Amit Shah. What's your view? Is this a referendum on the Modi government and its tenure in the office?
Well, first of all, yes, it is certainly not to our expectations, and the margin is a matter that we will have to assess and arrive at some kind of understanding that what has happened, where we have not clicked, how the people felt that they need to repose confidence on the other side. However, with regard to the question of it being a referendum on Prime Minister Modi or his government, certainly not, because before we've also won Maharashtra, Jharkhand and Haryana. So if at that time it was not treated as a referendum in victory, why would it be a referendum in defeat?
Mohanpai, how are you reading this mandate? Do you think it's a big blow, a big setback for the Modi government?
No, I think it's a setback definitely because it will help them. But I think it's a combination of the vote consolidation because Lalu and Nitish came together, and the fact that you had a great campaign by Lalu Prasad Yadav. They had local leaders, and Nishin had done fairly well. So the argument that Nishin has not done anything did not resound with the local population. The issues were very local. So it is a setback, but don't think it's a referendum on the Modi government, because whatever the Modi government has done at the all India level, I don't think is felt its repercussions on Bihar. Bihar is an agrarian state, is not even an urban state with a large urban population. The issues are very basic. Nitish has given them 8 hours of power. He has built some roads. The schools have started functioning. Law and order is better. And that's what they want. So you can't compare Bihar with the rest of the country, even though many people try to make it a referendum. But it is a blow in the sense that the numbers in the Rajya Sabha which they wanted, even though small, that may not come through. And it's also a message to the Prime Minister and the BJP that they have to get their act together. They have to focus on development. They have to counter this insidious campaign against them about religious tolerance, intolerance and all kind of stuff which is trying to drum up as an alternative to the growth and development debate and reform faster. So I think the message is very clear. It is a blow, but I don't think it's a referendum.
All right, the words coming in from Mohandas is the message is clear, it's a body blow to the BJP, but it isn't a referendum. Dr. Kumar, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you believe this is a reality check that the BJP needed at this stage? And where does the buck for all of this stop, the Prime Minister or Amit Shah?
Well, the buck must stop with Amit Shah, that's very clear. and because he's the party president, and the Prime Minister must now refocus his attention on carrying forward the domestic reform agenda rather than be in a campaign mode. He must recognize that India is so vast and so diverse a country that he alone cannot win state elections after state elections. So he has to therefore hand over the responsibility to his to other people to do that for him, while he focuses very sharply on the reform agenda, carries that forward and communicates that to the people. And the fact about this reform being a marathon and not a sprint, and therefore I don't want to do any headline grabbing, I think he must also rethink that, because at the moment it seems to everybody that it is business as usual in Delhi. And what the people elected him for was to make his own trajectory, have a different path, be much bolder, all of which unfortunately he has not been seen to be, and that there is the last thing, which is that he needs to communicate to the people of this country as to what he's done, and actually show on the ground that he is interested in pushing the reform agenda forward, and those reforms will improve the lives of the people, and not let pulses and lentils go up to 200 rupees a kilo, and not let the electricity plants not generate, etc., etc. But the central lesson for me is not be any longer in a campaign mode, but be in the mode for getting the economy up there and generate the jobs that the people have elected this government for, and forget the business as usual. Also, please try and bring in much more talent in your government, because you are visibly short of that, and if you rely only on the existing talent, I'm afraid you will not be able to deliver on all the promises that you have made, and people will hold you accountable to it. That's the central message from Bihar, that accountability is now truly there, and people will force it on you.
Fair point indeed. Business as usual, and that is perhaps why he's paid a price for it, electorally speaking. But Meghnad, Desai, you have the advantage of being the global insider of sorts as far as India is concerned. You can step back and look at things objectively. Do you really believe that Bihar is a referendum on the Modi government?
No, I don't think it's a referendum on the Modi government, but it is a test of BJP performance, not so much of the government as of the party. The party MPs and associated bodies like RSS have taken a victory for granted, and they have said things which I think are now been rejected by the people of Bihar. And I think that is a healthy thing which has happened. Political parties have to learn lessons, and I hope the BJP learns a lesson.
Right. S. Narayan, Gurcharan Das, I want to throw this to you. S. Narayan, to you first. I think that there was a fantastic point that Dr. Rajiv Kumar made on the fact that this government and the Prime Minister seems to perennially be in campaign mode. May 2014 is really a long way back, and he still seems to be in campaign mode. All his addresses, whether here, whether in US, I'm sure in a few days from now in the UK, the Wembley Stadium also, he seems to be perennially in a campaign mode without getting into the execution mode, which is what everyone had these expectations from. Is that the big disappointment, the big learning as well, that the government needs to get into execution mode and get away from this campaign mode that it has been for 17 months now?
I think it's a great opportunity for the government to realize that they need to rethink their strategy, particularly strategy in governance. And I do think that it should be now clear that a lot of promises that have been made are not yet being converted into action at the ground level. And particularly the point about Bihar is very, very true. Bihar is an agrarian state. So what has the government done or promised on agriculture? I think this would be the particular question that all the Bihar voters would have asked. And perhaps they are not particularly moved by things like smart cities, because it's a much more of an agrarian state, not a urban state. And a lot of infrastructure has already been set up by the state. So I think the issues that have been addressed are not the issues which Bihar was particularly concerned with, and therefore it's very, very important that government should rethink its strategy about governance.
Sure. I'll let Gurcharan Das have the last word in the first round of questions. The first big question that we're asking on the show this evening is this a referendum on the Modi government? Gurcharan Das, it's a mixed view from the panel as you've heard so far. Swami believes to some extent it is, Mohandas Pai believes it's not a referendum on the government, even though it is a setback for Modi, and Dr. Rajiv Kumar and S. Narayan believe it's time to refocus the priority of the government. What is your view? Is this a referendum on the Modi government and its performance over the last several months?
Well, contrary to what many people think and say, I think the rhetoric of this election was in fact mostly about development. The headlines of the papers and of the news channels were giving us the wrong impression. And the difference is that both Modi and Nitish Kumar really did focus mostly on development. The difference was that Nitish had something to show for it on the ground, and Modi did not. And Nitish's most dramatic sort of success, and Swami pointed this out a few weeks ago, which was that electricity in Bihar has dramatically improved. That from 700 megawatts in 2004, it has now gone to 3,400.
Like he's pointing out there, the point that you made about the electricity and the rural electrification in Gujarat and that being a huge advantage, playing to Nitish's advantage. You've traveled Bihar extensively. You were giving the BJP a 47 and over 180 to the Grand Alliance, so you're very, very close to those numbers, Swami, there. But are you here then suggesting that this is an acceptance of what Nitish has done in Bihar more than a rejection of Modi?
Without doubt, this is an issue on local, this is an election on local issues, not so much the large national ones. And as Gurcharan says, in the case of electricity, the first election, first re-election that Nitish got, he had built all those roads and law and order. He had something to show. But you can't rest on those laurels, you have to do something else. The truth is that after he broke with the BJP, the quality of administration actually went downhill for some time, which I think hurt him in the 2014 election. The big thing that picked up in the last 18 months was the electricity thing. And on this, they've done an all-out push. This bureaucrat called Pratay Amrit, who did the roads revolution in 2009, was in charge of electrification. And it has been a phenomenal change. Wherever we went, I'm often skeptical of what a bureaucrat tells me. But wherever we asked the villagers, they all said, the rural areas, they were getting 12, 18 hours electricity. In the towns, they were getting it almost round the clock. So this was a large, substantial achievement just in the run-up to the election.
Sure.
I remember Modi asking this rhetorical question, do you get electricity? He thought people are going to say no.
And people said yes,
in fact. He probably asked this question in 2014 when it might have been more relevant. But the thing that was relevant in 2014 May was not relevant in November 2015.
That's a valid point.
So local issues did matter, and I think the lack of a local leader for the BJP also clearly hurt them. Nalin Kohli, I want to throw this to you because we were talking about where does a buck stop. We had Dr. Rajiv Kumar say it stops at Amit Shah's office as the BJP party president, the man who spearheaded the campaign. The Prime Minister, one may argue, was the face of the BJP in this campaign. He led the campaign aggressively, was there in, campaigned extensively over several weeks. Is he rightly, shouldn't the buck stop at his office? Isn't he responsible for this defeat? And is it going to be unfair to now blame the local leadership who never really got their due in BJP? Look at the way Shatrughan Sinha is reacting to this verdict now.
Well, if that is your standard, then perhaps Mr. Rahul Gandhi would have to actually go somewhere in the hills and give up being in worldly life. But that can't be the norm of anything. In politics, there are ups and downs. The BJP has seen as low as 2 seats in 1984, and today we have a full majority government. Credit is also shared. Certainly, when there is a defeat, that also has to be apportioned in terms of understanding where the structure fails. Every time there's a victory, you always will see the leadership go out and say, we thank our Karyakartas. That is the nature of the BJP. It's not a single person party. It's not a single authority party. It's a democratic setup. And here anyone can aspire to be at the very top, and they do reach the top. So therefore, I won't buy it that, the buck stops anywhere. The party takes responsibility. Collectively, the leadership will get its head together, assess the reasons, and whatever it is, we have to move ahead and we have to learn from those mistakes, course correct where required. In any case, democracy is not a static, nor is politics a static medium. Either case, we have to learn from victory and defeat, because you can't be resting on your laurels if you win, and you certainly can't be, completely finished with a defeat. You have to just move on.
You've got to move on, you've got to reassess and re-strategize. But let's bring the focus to really the big economy and the big reform process, and what does Bihar really mean for all of that. Dr. Kumar, I want to throw this question to you. There was a fair amount of obstructionism between the government on one hand and the opposition on the other, and reforms are a function of the strength of the ruling party, is what I've been saying all along. With the BJP getting the drubbing that it has in Bihar, do you believe it's going to be more difficult for them to push economic reforms, to push through the economic decision-making, at least in Parliament? Will opposition perhaps play harder ball? Will they be more adamant?
Just before answering that very valid question, let me just say that what Mr. Nalin Kohli said, while true in theory, has not been true in practice, because the BJP has followed a presidential form of campaign, which they must now recognize does not suit a country as diverse and as heterogeneous as India. Because India is the diversity in India is just immense for the same person to be able to cut ice everywhere. So that's the first. But on the second one, there is so much that can be done outside the legislative arena. And that is so much can be done in terms of the executive action that is needed. And I give you one big example. This government has gone on and on about public sector banks reforms, that they will recapitalize them, they will change the governance, this, that and the other. But what the people had been expecting was that all these 25, 26 public sector banks will be consolidated and merged and put together as 4 or 5 banks, which could then become globally competitive. None of that. Now that doesn't require any voting in the Lok Sabha or the Raj Sabha. We are not asking for the government equity to come down below 51%. I gave you that as an example to show that there is so much that can be done on the reforms to make this economy much more efficient and globally competitive. On the other hand, what I'm beginning to see, especially with our exports going down for the last 10 months, is call for more and more protection. And a review of our free trade agreements. And I met a professor from JNU who told me that he's done a review from the Ministry of Commerce and come to the conclusion that free trade agreements are not good for India. Now that sort of economic policy agenda does not require opposition to play hardball. Opposition will play hardball. The BJP, when it was in the opposition, also played hardball. And I'm afraid my suggestion for Mr. Jaitley to rise and say that his statement about obstructing the parliament being a legitimate behavior on part of the opposition was wrong, has not been accepted. He should try and do that to placate the opposition and also to bring back democratic practices on the rational and logical course that they should be. And therefore, but I'm afraid, but my last suggestion, really again an appeal to the government, would be see how far you can go with the executive agenda and bring in new ideas, bring in innovative ideas like Mr. Modi did in Gujarat, and people will respond to you better than ever before.
Fair point indeed. Mr. Ryan, if I may come to you with this, a lot of experts, including Swami, have thought that the government hasn't really taken the opposition by its horns. They should have been far bolder. They should have steamrolled reforms. They had a 282 majority behind them, the Rajya Sabha obstruction notwithstanding. But with the popular mandate in Bihar being against them, in your own assessment, is it going to be difficult for the government to push through the tough reforms that it would have perhaps wanted to?
I think what is required for the kind of reforms that are being talked about is actually professionalism in implementation. Let's take the particular point that was mentioned about bank consolidation. Certainly, it does not require a parliament. It does not require the Rajya Sabha. It is something that can be done if there is adequate professionalism within the government to push this through. There are similarly, how much dithering has happened over the civil aviation policy? It went up, it came down, and what has emerged finally is very much of a half measure. Why? This is again very much in the executive realm. So somewhere in I would say in governance, somewhere in the management of governance, there is a lack of adequate domain knowledge among the people who are going ahead with the implementation of the policies. And I think this is something serious which the Prime Minister's office and all the ministries must understand, that why is it that we are not able to push through what we are saying, and where is it getting held up? Whether it's a Ganga cleaning project, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, everything is getting held up somewhere in implementation. So if every step is getting held,
I think we've got two now eminent panelists pointing out that there is a serious talent issue in this government and that there is a lack of domain knowledge as well, which is stalling some reforms. But Mohandas, I want to throw to you because I know the right thing to say would be that reforms will get reprioritized and the government will focus on execution. But the fact of the matter is that politically, if you were to read this mandate, it's an overwhelming mandate in favor of a political force that is left of center, in favor of a political force that believes in the politics of populism. And if you look at what happened in Delhi as well, another strong mandate in favor of a government whose economic thinking is left of center, of political leadership. Do you think this could put pressure on this government to also alter its economic stance and move more left of center?
No, I don't think the Bihar verdict is for the left of center. The Bihar verdict is a consolidation of a certain caste wars between Lalu and Nitish. If you go back to the parliamentary election, you find that they split the vote and now the vote has come together. There's an arithmetic. And two, Nitish actually did a good job. And I think Modi's message of development didn't resonate with people because he asked the wrong question. And three, BJP did not have a local leader. You'll find that in every state where the BJP has had a local leader and Modi has come and campaigned, they've done well earlier, like in Maharashtra, in Rajasthan, etc. So I don't think so. The Delhi verdict was a totally different verdict against maladministration, against corruption, lack of water. It's not a call for economic action or a shift in direction. I don't think so. I think Indians are inherently for an open economy, for capitalism. We are a trading class. We've been an open system for too long. And I think that's an important thing. The key issue is delivery of government services and corruption. I think those are the key issues. And the NDA government should now look at reducing the cost of doing business. For example, the cost of doing business in India has not come down in the last 18 months. Two, labor-intensive industries have not got attention. What has been done for labor-intensive industries and job creation? We have not seen any upsurge in job creation. We have not seen the impact of the policy decision on the ground. They have been disconnected. And third, very importantly, they have not spoken to the states to have a dialogue how to improve matters. I think it's very important for the states too to be involved, and they've been distanced from the state, and many of the states are not cooperated. And fourth, there are many things they can do. For example, at the ports, when goods come in, can they ship out in 24 hours? There is a CBTD issue, a central government issue. There are many things they have to do at the grassroots. Like somebody said, I think the government lacks the competence, capability and ability to understand how real life works at the grassroots level in business and what impacts people. They're getting more remote being in Delhi, and that is impacting the decision making, because much of the decision making is not having an impact. So they must relook at it, get better talent. The cabinet is shown of talent, barring 2 or 3 or 4 ministers in higher education, in health, in science and technology. I mean, we've gone back.
Right.
And I think, this is beginning to hurt.
Fair enough. So now I think it's now very clear we've got...
very unhappy. Lack of communication.
Sure, I think, Mohan, if I could just interrupt you now, we've got 3 panelists who believe that this government and the cabinet is short of talent. I can't wait to ask that to Swami. But before I go to Swami, a quick question to Gurcharan. The reason I'm a little skeptical on whether the government will actually from here on push the pedal on reforms is because of this own government's track record. Look at the Delhi verdict. After the drubbing in Delhi, one would have thought that the government would get its economic act together and push the pedal on reforms, look at more job creation, focus on the development agenda, and yet what it did in the run-up to the Bihar election is there for everyone to see. Are you hopeful, Gurcharan Das, that now after another big political setback, the government will alter its strategy, both politically and its economic strategy, and focus on what it got voted for?
The problems of India are managerial, far more than they are political. And I believe, as some of the speakers have said, it is correct, that these are problems of implementation. And a good leader gets into the messy details of a problem. He doesn't just pronounce strategy. You get involved in the details, and so I feel that we should not just worry too much about the gridlock in Parliament. We should not worry about the big bang reforms. The reality is that we had the highest growth rate in our economy from 2003 and to 2011. And during these periods, we still did not have the GST. We had the old land law. And so we had the same labor legislation. So the fact is that it is see India, if you want to create jobs, see India through the eyes of a small entrepreneur. See the India through the eyes of the builders in the country. I mean, just last month, a builder in Thane killed himself. He committed suicide because he was harassed for bribes constantly. He says, I don't mind a slowdown in my business. I don't mind that there are empty flats, but I do mind the constant harassment.
Fair point indeed. Gurcharan, just stay with us because I'm going to take this question across to Swami. Many people on this panel seem to believe that the problem with this government is the dearth of talent. There is an absolute shortage of talent. It's all great vision, but as far as the execution is concerned, as far as the implementation is concerned, there aren't enough good ministers. Your assessment?
That may be a part of the problem. It's no more than a part of the problem. The fact is that if you don't have a majority in the Rajya Sabha and if you have those obstructions that is going on, the question is how then do you progress on very delicate areas like land and labor, which have been major issues in the past. Now, I think the point that Arun Shourie had made even before the elections, that the right way to reform is to just delegate the power to the states. Let individual states lead on these reforms. Let them compete on reforms. So instead of attempting to bludgeon through major issues at the central government and run up against the huge resistance that you will inevitably face in the Rajya Sabha, the thing is to let it be done through the states. I think in the case of the ease of doing business, that is exactly the model being followed. I think actually a fair amount is going to be achieved out there, but it does not involve big ticket reforms in New Delhi. So I think the business of attempting to get things done through the states will pay more dividends than attempting to bludgeon your way through. And when you say get more talented people, talented people, but for what? If you can't really do labor reforms, you can't really do land reforms in New Delhi. In some of the other areas, there is a kind of half reform of the PPP infrastructure thing. There is a half or a quarter reform of the bus electricity. I mean, these are huge, big issues. And I don't think the issue is domain knowledge of a minister.
So are you
there are huge political difficulties.
So are you here suggesting that the big bang structural reforms are not going to happen?
They are not going to happen because in the first place you don't have the ability to carry them through. Second, the time is not ripe. It is better to do it by delegating the powers to the state governments. Let them show successes and let those then be replicated. I think that is the better route.
Perhaps a more pragmatic route as well. Meghnad, Desai, let me throw this across to you. From where you see things, do you see the Bihar verdict impacting and stalling the entire reform process in India?
No, I think whatever would have happened in Bihar, the government had to start building consensus at the center, making deals with the opposition to get anything passed in parliament. This will reinforce the need for the BJP to negotiate with the opposition, to come to terms with it and build a consensus. In India, reform happens only through consensus, regardless of whether you have a majority in parliament or not. I think BJP will have to learn the lesson and they'll have to start negotiating with the opposition.
Correct. Let me take a cue from what you just have said and throw it across to Nalin Kohli then. Nalin, do you believe it's fair to assume here that more executive decisions will of course be taken and there will be more reaching out by the party in parliament? You will perhaps strike a more conciliatory note instead of just blaming the opposition for being obstructionist?
First, I have not said so. That would be an incorrect assumption on my comment. My point is, like ease of doing business, transparency, killing corruption in the government. These are tasks that are only purely executive decisions. They don't require new laws. There are ample laws that are there which Parliament has already legislated. Those laws don't end with the change of a government or with the non-functioning of Parliament. So that mechanism is there. The delivery and the working around them, with them, in a more efficient, transparent, accountable way is what makes government better. So minimum government, maximum governance is also a slogan that is not only about repealing laws, it is also about better delivery and ensuring that the government is not an impediment to growth. The government, on the contrary, is a facilitator. And that's been the focus of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government from day one.
Right. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, I know there's a lot of focus on the executive decision that the government will take, but let's also not forget the legislative agenda, which is incredibly important as well, because GST is still stuck in Parliament. One's not sure if it'll get through in the winter session of Parliament as well. Are you any hopeful now that we've seen this verdict and the fact that this verdict comes in the backdrop of an extremely polarized political climate? You know, you will agree with me when I say that we haven't seen this kind of a polarized political environment in a fairly long time, where, you know, on the one hand you have the BJP and almost all the anti-BJP forces coming together in some form. So in this kind of a political climate, are you hopeful at all the GST constitutional amendment bill will get cleared in the winter session of Parliament?
You know, this kind of a political polarization, as you said yourself, something between the left of the center and the right of the center is actually a very healthy thing to happen, because that will really then force all these people to sell their agenda and to implement their agenda in the eyes of the people. And I hope, and I think this is why it is so important now for the BJP to bring its people out and articulate its vision, which Mr. Modi had the chance to do in February, March of 2014, but I hope he didn't do that, and I hope he can do it. Reforms in this country has to be done through consensus, but that consensus is not a deal making with the opposition. That consensus is in building the public opinion through sheer achieving the hegemony of your own ideology, of your own ideas, and that is what needs to be done. GST will not pass if we rely either on budget way through and saying that we'll browbeat the opposition, or on pleading with the opposition.
S. Narayan, comment on that, because you've seen the GST journey over the years as well in our public policy space. Given this political climate that we are seeing right now, how hopeful are you that the GST will go through, or the constitutional amendment bill will get cleared in the winter session of Parliament, and the GST will keep its April 2016 day? Does it look like a bit of a lost cause right now?
First, a couple of points on what Swami said. On land and labor. Land, as you know, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu has come up with a totally new concept of aggregating land, which seems to be working. The Tamil Nadu government has passed a kind of a parliamentary legislative resolution, which is helping the land acquisition program to work. So I don't think one needs to worry about the parliament to legislate on land anymore. And again, on labor, different states are already loosening up labor regulations and labor requirements. So I do not think that the parliament is absolutely essential to take forward some of the initiatives that have already been announced. But yes, when you come to the GST, here it is stuck in parliament, and the GST is extremely important if you want to take this manufacturing in India, make in India forward. And I think it is very important that the government now reaches out to all the parties and all the states, equally well to all the states, to ensure that there is some kind of a consensus to take the GST forward. One opportunity could well be, okay, even if you start, you can start GST very much on a particular, there are maybe 20 or 30 linked chains in the GST. Maybe you can start them on 2 or 3 linked chains and assure the states that there is going to be a benefit for them, and then carry on chain by chain.
Fair enough. I think let's briefly shift focus away from the economics and bring it back to politics, because I think one upside of this verdict could be a possible change in the narrative. I think Mohandas made that point a little while earlier as well. A lot of talk of tolerance, intolerance, depends on which side of the debate you are in, and I'd love to have a Mohandas and Swaminathan Aiyar debate on that as well. But without getting into the specifics of that intolerance debate, very briefly, Mohandas, do you believe now that, at least now that the verdict is out of the way, you know, the narrative will change? All this talk of cow politics and whatnot, I'm not getting into who started it and who had the last word, but do you think now there'll be a full stop to all of that?
I don't think there'll be a full stop to all of that, because Rahul Gandhi had made it clear when he spoke to the media that he's going to go after the BJP and the RSS. Nitish Kumar made sure now that now the action shifts to Delhi, and the left and leftist centers and all the malcontents are now going to seize the moment to put a knife into the heart of this government. So when Parliament opens, they will make sure Parliament is disrupted, Parliament will not function, they're going to raise all these issues and embarrass the government and stop all reforms, because they want to make this government a lame duck government. So I think it's going to accelerate unless the other side of the narrative comes up and people talk, and the BJP restrains its people from entering into a debate and making very silly, extreme statements. So we're going to see this heat up even more. Is not going to stop, because now most people are ganged up. They've got victory, they smelt blood, now they'll go for the kill. So I think the Modi government has to be circumspect, shift the debate away, ask all these loony elements to shut up and not to make statements, make sure they manage the media well, make sure they have the nice, correct statements to be made, and make sure they debate it properly. And the opposition is not going to give them any quarter. I think it is only going to accelerate.
Manage the media or not, I don't know about that, but the cow doesn't seem to be getting any votes. And will the BJP then course correct and get the narrative back to development, you think?
No, I 100% agree with Mohandas Pai that the opposition has tasted blood. And they are not going to let go. They are not going to give these guys an easy pass on GST or anything else. I agree that, they'll disrupt parliament. They are not going to let go. They say, we've got these guys by there, we're going to continue. Not only that, from their point of view, you see, it's all very well to say, Modi must now rein in the loonies, as though the loonies are a little fringe. I'm sorry, the loonies are not a little fringe, they are the heart of the party. You may say that some of the leaders want to calm it down, but the guys with the strong Hindutva thing, with the strong views on the cows, strong on worship, they are not guys who are a fringe. They are the heart of the party. And in a democracy, you can't stop them from talking, and you can't really tell them to shut up either.
But will the BJP course correct and realize that this is not worked?
I would merely say, I don't think the BJP has gone out of its way. The beef thing, they didn't do it. It happened in society. Then you say, again you had another guy lynched in Jammu. The BJP didn't do it. The Kalburgi got murdered. The BJP didn't do it. You got the Granth Sahib desecrated in Punjab. In other words, all kinds of things are going wrong. But the BJP at this particular point of time finds that if something has happened about beef, the internal mechanics, the internal DNA is such that they can't bring themselves to give a simple outright condemnation. Right. Because they are so fixated on this cow worship business. So all I can say is, in the case of Bihar, as they said, a cow produces more beef than votes, as Mr. Amit Shah has discovered. So if you try to focus on this, you don't win votes. You see, the Hindus are don't feel under threat. So there's no way you can consolidate the Hindu vote by focusing on things. All that you do, in fact, is the opposition then consolidates against you. So every time you try to focus on some of these issues, or your guys speak out, all the other guys say, we now need to get together, especially the Muslims. Right. So the anti-BJP vote is getting consolidated rather than a Hindutva vote getting consolidated under the BJP. They need to realize this, but what they are going to do about it, I don't know, because frankly, it's in their DNA.
That's a fair point indeed. The cow produces more beef than votes, and I think Amit Shah lives to realize that. But Meghnad, Desai, let's bring you into this discussion and talk to you about the communal narrative that India has been seeing in the past few weeks, if not a month or two here. Do you believe this is the reality check, and the BJP or the government will try and shift the focus back to development? Will the narrative be consciously changed now?
Well, I hope so, because what it really requires is for the BJP top leadership to crack the whip and tell all their MPs, especially their ministers, that they have to be very disciplined in their Twitter statements, in their other statements, and they have to be building up a consensus. They have to build up BJP as a national party and stop pushing the Hindutva agenda as aggressively as they have been pushing it.
Right. Gurcharan Das, I know you've got strong views on this debate as well. We've had you on the channel as well speak very eloquently on how the narrative has shifted away from development to the politics of beef, so to say. But do you agree with Mohandas Pai that the narrative is not going to change and both sides are equally responsible? Or do you agree with Swaminathan Aiyar that it's the BJP that's failed to rein in what's not the fringe but what is core to the party? What is your view? And do you believe that the narrative will now change, or is it only going to get worse from here on?
Before I answer that, I think there's another important lesson for all of us from this whole long period of distraction that we have had from the Bihar election. I mean, it is really, the fact is that our country is continuously in an election mode. and this has delays crucial reforms and executive decisions. Instead of worrying about jobs, BJP's top leadership has been concerned only about Bihar. Now, I personally think that this is as important an issue to tackle as a country, and it should be tackled as much as any economic reform. And that is the issue that we should, and there's a fair amount of consensus on this, that we need to move to fixed term elections, as many countries have done, including the latest being the UK. So we have a central election every 5 years on a fixed time, and a state election every 2.5 years, all at the same time. Now, this is not immediately connected to this, but the angst I think a lot of us are feeling about the fact that the reform agenda has been stuck, and the whole distractions that have taken place are a result. So I really feel very strongly. And there is, what I'm surprised, actually there's a lot of consensus in Parliament, both on the BJP and Congress and the other parties on this. And this is something that we should push as people responsible for prosperity and jobs in the country.
Fair point indeed. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, you want to come in on that? Will you see the fringe elements or the not so fringe elements being finally clamped down? Will there be more voices of sanity in this government who are going to speak out and not be noticed for their conspicuous silence?
Well, I'm afraid not, because I think what you call the fringe voices or the loony voices, etc., I think is the organization. I mean, is that organization, and that's their core agenda. But what the government and the BJP and the Prime Minister can do really is to appeal on a completely different agenda to the people of this country, and with a little bit more of humility, if I dare say so, and also an appeal to show that they are trying their best, rather than speak from a position of, as it were, from a position of power and a position, and talk down on the people, because that's what I've been noticing. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that, the Prime Minister has constantly talked about cooperative federalism, but I don't see that happening. On the ground, people see this government not at all cooperating with the Delhi government to make the life of the people of Delhi any better. And therefore, what I would hope is that the Niti Aayog becomes far more active. It seems to be in a somnolent kind of a situation where it kind of comes up in fits and starts, and in some conference or the other. They should have the agenda of actually pushing the cooperative federalism forward, and the Prime Minister and his ministers reach out to the people in the states, whether they are BJP chief ministers or otherwise, to show, as Mr. Modi had said during his campaign, that Team India comprises the Prime Minister and the chief ministers, and not the Prime Minister and his cabinet alone. That has to be put in practice. If that is done, these fringe elements, these loony elements, will be slapped down in reality by the people of this country once and for all. That is what is required today, I'm afraid.
Well, whether it's central or not is another debate in itself. But before we get to the closing comments from all of them, this is probably the other big fallout of this verdict, really. And I want to start this round with you, Nalin Kohli. Will this verdict consolidate anti-BJP forces nationally? You've got the UP elections, a big one coming up as well. So maybe in UP, and more importantly, even at a national level, do you now expect, given the fact that the opposition has tasted blood, do you expect all anti-BJP forces to sort of gang up together?
There is one important lesson to be seen, or a conclusion to be drawn from the 2014 election, and it continues right up to here. What has changed in Indian polity in a big way is that at one point it was unipolar, with only the Congress as that force. Then it became bipolar, with the BJP emerging as a major force, and the bipolarity was actually two coalition fronts, which first was the NDA and then it was the UPA. From 2014, the BJP is the central pole of that entire political churning, and the Congress is just another player among all the regional players. So Indian politics is going through a phenomenal churning and phase. That perspective of whether it's going to last, whether those people who will get together will be able to work out and all, it's for them to assess. As far as the BJP is concerned, we would like to build on where we have reached, and reassess ourselves from where we couldn't reach.
The Congress, whether it's going to be a lead pair or a laggard, notwithstanding. So, I mean, what is your sense? There will be realignment of forces, the kind we have seen in Bihar, strange bedfellows coming together, or Nitish and Lalu. Who would have thought of that? And they've tasted big victory.
It has happened in the past and will happen now. I mean, when the Congress was the pole, all kinds of disparate forces got together to form an anti-Congress front. Now everybody will form an anti-BJP front wherever feasible. It will not be feasible everywhere. In the case of Uttar Pradesh, which you just mentioned, I do not see Mulayam and Mayawati getting together on a platform. I think if at all there are to be combinations, it may be Mayawati plus BJP, which has been there in the past, with Mulayam and Congress as another, I'm guessing at this stage many things are possible. But the idea that all the parties getting together against BJP in Uttar Pradesh, that's not going to happen. But yes, the BJP now faces the music. It is now, as Nalin Kohli says, the ruling party, and Congress is down to 44 seats, where it's willing to play the role of junior partner. And as long as Congress is junior partner, it can join lots of coalitions. I will simply say at the end of it all, the BJP's position, therefore, we have to see as is inherently fragile in a number of states. Because it won this huge victory in the Lok Sabha poll, the moment you get this realignment of forces, its weakness in the states becomes evident. So I would say, A, BJP needs to completely forget about trying to get a majority in the Rajya Sabha. I mean, put that out of your agenda. Just go state by state. But don't bank on the Modi magic being a formula that's going to win you all the states. You've got a very tough slog ahead, and this anti-BJP front is going to hit you again and again and again, just as earlier there was an anti-Congress.
Mohandas, by anti-BJP front, how should we read it from an economic point of view? Is that necessarily a bad thing? Is that going to slow down the reform process? Are we going to be more populist in the way governance happens in states and maybe even nationally as well? Would you be concerned because the market is concerned, not because the BJP is losing, the market is worried? We've seen a huge sell-off as well over the last couple of weeks because of the emergence of the front which is more left of center.
Well, the market was very concerned about the fact that the UPA too had policy paralysis compounded by political, political activism. Parliament was shut down. So here we're going to see Parliament shut down, the opposition coming together, all kind of disparate, political parties going after Narendra Modi as Prime Minister and the BJP. They want to make them a lame-duck government. So on top of that, they had to learn to manage the politics. They have to manage all this intolerant discussion. All this leftists will come together and go after them, target them on various issues. On top of that, they have to deliver form reforms. So I think it's going to be a tough call. So investors are concerned. How will the government react? What will the government do on the economic side? Will the government be able to manage a disruptive parliament? If they do that, then investment will come in. And also, I think there's one issue we're not touched upon. Indian industry is upset and dispirited because of the lack of communication with government. I think the government should reach out to Indian industry, talk to them, have a constant dialogue and try to solve their issues rather than calling them once in a while just to show a public posture that they're talking to them. Communication is almost broken down because there is no forum for Indian industry to meet. Prime Minister Modi went to Silicon Valley, met Zuckerberg, have the town hall, he went to Google, spoke with Microsoft, spoke everywhere. But has he done the same in Bangalore with the IT industry? The IT industry is getting upset that you're not come here, spoken to us. Look at us. We are delivering $160 billion of business, creating large-scale employment, but you don't meet us. Now, you have to reach out. I think we have to invoke the animal spirit and create a sense of optimism for that communication outreach is as equally important as managing the political logjam.
All right, communication is as much important as managing the political logjam. It's important to meet Mohandas Pai and not just Mark Zuckerberg there. Fair point indeed and point well noted. But Gurcharan Das, if I may let you have the last word on this leg of the discussion. And in 30 seconds, I'm going to go around the table and quickly ask you. The whole idea of this debate really was that this is a realignment of forces. It's an experiment that has paid off very well in Bihar. And if Congress is willing to play the junior partner, which it did in Bihar, are we going to see forces like these emerge all over the country? And that is going to be the Achilles heel for the BJP and Mr. Modi to manage.
Well, I hope that the BJP takes the right lessons from this election. And there are important lessons. This election has reinforced the idea that voters are looking for jobs. and they're looking for development, and jobs will come only if you make the life of the entrepreneur easier. The one quick way, I mean, the largest creator of jobs is construction. And if Mr. Modi, would focus his mind on the small things, not on the big pronouncements, actually debottleneck some of the processes. Somebody talked about talking to industry. All these are steps in the right direction, that you need to dive deep into this. He has done it before in Gujarat. The idea and to do it in a way that he will have an impact on all the states is also possible. So many of the states are BJP controlled, and he can directly influence that. I hope that this is now a wake-up call to do the right thing.
Right.
The mandate of the end of 2014 May was to stop inflation, stop corruption, and create jobs. Now, the first two seem to have been reasonably successful. The third one has not happened, and we need that to happen.
In 30 seconds, yes, Narayan, then it is eventually everything boils down to Bijli Sadak Pani, and that's what Bihar seems to have voted for. That's what India seems to be anxious for.
I would like to end with a very different comment, and that is I do feel, sitting in the South, that there is a neglect of the politics as well as the economics of the South. The Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and to a great extent Karnataka stories are totally different. And if the national parties or the national groups are going to forget that these four states are moving ahead as a totally different trajectory, I think we would have a lot of political issues coming down in the next few years.
Dr. Rajiv Kumar, I'll let you have the last word. In 30 seconds, what's the key message from this election? And you believe that the coming together of anti-BJP forces is not necessarily a bad thing, right?
It's not necessarily a bad thing at all. It will force the government to get its act together.
This should be the wake-up call for the BJP. It's a grand experiment in Indian politics, one that has paid off and has delivered a stunning victory as far as Nitish Kumar and Lalu Prasad Yadav is concerned. The BJP's reality check, it needs to perhaps do a course correction.
That's right. Big thank you to all our guests this evening joining us for the special debate right here on ET Now. Swaminathan Aiyar, Rajiv Kumar, Gurcharan Das, Mohandas Pai, S. Narayan and Nalin Kohli. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion right here on ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.